All right, thanks everybody for joining us today. We'll go ahead and get started. So welcome to the webinar today. We've got HouseRater reports for energy code and home energy ratings. Thanks for joining us today. As always, today's webinar is being recorded. It will be uploaded to our YouTube channel, which you can find by either searching SPER, S-P-E-R, or on YouTube, or you can go directly to our website at eepartnership.org. And under our news section, you'll find our resources page. Once you're on our resources page, you'll find a link to our channel. We have well over 150 videos up there with a variety of different topics. Today's webinar is eligible, as always, for ICC CEUs, but you must be present for at least 3/4 of the presentation. Within 72 hours after today's presentation, you'll receive a course evaluation email from Kathy Lawrence. Please complete the survey and send it back to her, and you'll receive a course completion certificate that will contain the course title and course ID that you'll need when you're reporting your CEUs to ICC. As always, the chat feature is open. Use that to report any technical difficulties you might be experiencing during the presentation. The Q&A feature is also open. Use that to post any questions you might have, and we'll try to go through those as we go through the presentation, depending on if it's related to the slide or not. If something pops up, you want to ask a question, we can talk about it at the end of the presentation if it's not pertinent to what's on the screen. So again, thanks for joining us today. We have Connor Dillon with Building Science Institute, commonly referred to as BSI. And then I'll let Connor make the introduction for him in just a second. But for us, those that are new to SPER or new to one of our webinars, we are one of 6 energy efficiency organizations throughout the nation. We're one of 6. We're the smaller and the newest of the 6, but we cover Texas and Oklahoma, which is a large area for me to cover by myself. We are a member-based nonprofit organization. We've got 50+ members across a wide cross-section of energy efficiency industries, manufacturers, other nonprofits, other industries that like to see us advocate for the adoption and advancement of energy codes across Texas and Oklahoma. Our focus is on the outreach for education and collaboration with clean energy. My job is to do training across Texas and Oklahoma. So I'm happy to be an assistance to anything or anyone that needs assistance with energy codes. So with that being said, I will stop sharing my screen and I will let you introduce yourself, Connor, and you can drive. Hold on one second.
So everyone, I am Connor Dillon. I am the quality manager of Building Science Institute. I've got several certifications. Relevant, obviously, is I'm a quality assessor under BSI. I've recently, part of the pilot program, actually pretty excited to say that, got certified as total building performance from BPI. I've got ResNet certifications as well. And as you can see, the very last line item, I'm mostly not an idiot. And that's kind of important, I think, in this industry. Have a little bit of common sense, right? So let me give everyone a little bit of an idea of what it is we're going to be covering. So believe it or not, I'm going to set the stage about different home energy rating systems you might encounter. And then, because it's important to know how these things are supposed to be done, I will talk about the nationally recognized process for home energy ratings. Then we'll chat about how HouseRater actually works, and then we'll look at some reports, and then I'm sure I will talk fast enough because I've been hopped up on coffee all morning. I'll take some questions. Okay. So with that said, home energy ratings today. What is a home energy rating system? It's actually got a long and storied history. It's a recognized process by which characteristics of a home's estimated energy performance is reviewed, verified, and certified. The phrase home energy rating system actually arose in the 70s and 80s, and it was formally handed to the U.S. Department of Energy in the 1992 Energy Policy Act. The DOE then worked with an organization called the HERS Council to build a national home energy rating system. And then due to different lobbying efforts and groups, eventually the project was actually pushed into a private nonprofit. That group then got the standard to be accredited by ANSI, and that created the ANSI 301 standard for calculating the energy rating index. This is the standard that's referenced in the IECC in that R406 path, which I'm sure everyone gets really frustrated about when they think about it. Uh, Home energy rating systems are administered by nationally and regionally recognized home certification organizations. This is a system that was set up by the EPA and DOE to recognize companies that have an approved home energy rating systems. So the national HCOs are required to use the ANSI 301 standard as the baseline for the home energy rating system. ANSI 301 is actually a lot more than just computer calculations. If you pull it up, you'll see there are several appendices. And so Appendix B is actually the inspection procedure requirements for minimum rated features. And then Appendix A is the grading of insulation standard. So, it's a all-encompassing standard and it's the baseline for the national HCOs. And then they use that as the baseline and layer on quality management and training certification systems that the EPA and the DOE recognize. So I'm going to go through a few of these. The first one, everyone's probably heard of ResNet at some point. They are also the standards development organization for ANSI 301. So if you look it up, it says ANSI ResNet ICC 301. They also manage the ANSI standards 380, 310, and 850. Unfortunately, kind of confusingly, they also have their own proprietary standards that compete with the national standards. So that's how you get the HERS index. That is a distinct variant of the ANSI 301 Energy Rating Index, and even different from the R406 ERI. Their system is really typified by this concept of providers. And so there are three categories. There are software, training, and QA providers. Unfortunately, a lot of the QA providers are also the rating companies. So the oversight that you might think is happening is not as third party as you may believe. Next up is BSI. We have been recognized as equivalent to ResNet. We are quite literally the only other nationally recognized HCO. We're best known for having centralized training and oversight. So if a project is registered by BSI, we did the actual quality management on it. We don't have providers in our system. And then unlike ResNet, we don't have competing standards. We just adopt the ANSI standards or use ISO standards. So our quality management system is a lot different than what you might have experienced previously with ResNet. I do want to touch on a couple other HCOs. There's Cheers, which is the leading HERS provider in California. They are also a recognized multifamily review organization. So multifamily projects that pursue an Energy Star or Zero Energy Rating home certification through the ASHRAE 90.1 or prescriptive path can work with Cheers for review processes. And then there is also CalCerts. They strictly do business in California. They don't have any real purpose outside of California. And then, honorable mention, there are still some state-based home energy rating systems. So Alaska has its own statewide home energy rating system. Because of the extreme climate they face, theirs is really focused on the envelope and heating systems in the dwelling unit. And I can tell you, I actually went up there to present at the annual conference that AHFC hosts. And I've lived in the South my whole life. It was pretty cold. And it was actually kind of funny because the temperature raised to the high 30s when I was there. And they're like, oh, yeah, we have a heat wave. And I just kind of chuckled because it got down to below zero the week after I left. So glad I kind of missed that. I don't think I have warm enough socks for it. Now let's go ahead and talk about the home energy rating process defined by ANSI 301 and the EPA DOE requirements. So where is it drawn from? The formal structure can be found in the Energy Star National Program requirements. It's called the Energy Star certification process, and it actually lays out the explicit structure for how a home energy rating should be performed. It's made up of 4 separate steps, right? So first, you have to get an approved tool. You can't just use anything willy-nilly off the shelf, right? Then you have to model the design based on the plans and specifications. Then you build the house, and finally, the home gets verified. All right, so in BSI system, we have a single software vendor, HouseRater. They have passed the stringent test that's developed by the federal programs, and they can generate an energy rating index, IECC compliance, and above codes program certifications for homes across the US and technically the world. We do have international clients. And then in other HCOs, you may actually have 3 or more choices for software tools. Unfortunately, this has led to something called gaming the system, because you might have one tool that shows a house performs better than another. But then on the next project, this new house looks better in the other software tool, and so they just use it. So there's kind of some weird stuff that happens when you have multiple software tools. Uh, Next step and the second step, when you're modeling the design based on the plans and specs, depending on the scope of work of the verifier, it may also include verification of energy code compliance or above code program compliance. And at this step, this is typically where the verifier will generate and provide projected reports for a permit. And I will keep in mind that scope of work question, because I will come back to that. And then step 3, the rubber hits the road, builder builds the house, and everything is pretty straightforward at this point, right? Well, it's not so simple. So the last stage is the verification stage, and it overlaps with the build process. So BSI recommends a minimum of 2 inspections to accurately perform a home energy rating, a pre-drywall insulation inspection and air sealing inspection, and then a final where any remaining mandatory tests can be performed. During these inspections, the verifier should verify the home is being built per the plans and specifications. And this includes making sure the designed HVAC equipment is installed, the ductwork is installed per Manual D, and the insulation is installed correct to grade 1. However, there are some challenges. And I'm going to go through some challenges that I found in discussions with code officials and other professionals in the industry. And this first one's really, really important for the code officials on the call. The third-party verifier may not have an energy model in the scope of work of their contract with the builder, right? So this scope of work question has caused lots of issues over the years, where you have he said, she said things, builders hiring verifiers, asking them to show code compliance. The verifier thinks it's just going to be a blower door test and a duct test maybe. And then at the end, they're asking for paperwork, and the rater said, well, that wasn't what I was supposed to do. I was just here for testing. So a recommendation that I have for everyone who has the authority to make this decision, make sure you request a scope of work from the third-party verifier that's working on the project. And I recommend having that during the permit process. It could save a lot of headaches by the end of the project, where people aren't pointing fingers at each other, wondering why we're not getting the C of O because someone didn't verify energy code compliance because they didn't think it was part of their scope of work. Another big one,
Hey,
and
just real quick,
unfortunately,
Connor,
yeah,
that's a great point. And especially with low-rise multifamily, there's programs out there like NGBS that allow for sampling, which your city may not allow for sampling for 3 stories or less. So if the third party's only contracted to do NGBS inspections, they're going to sample per that protocol. They're not actually doing the energy inspections for code compliance. So, I mean, I just wanted to I know you just said that, but rephrase it that way with the scope of work is, in my opinion, becoming extremely important to get that up front to know who's doing what.
yeah, and I'll color in the lines a little bit more too. We've had clients that, I get a phone call from a builder saying, hey, so and so didn't do what I told them to, or didn't do what I asked them to. And I say, okay, lay out the problem. And it's something along these lines, right? I didn't get the energy code report or certificate from them, and the city's asking for it. So then I go and I call the client. I ask the client, and I say, hey, this is the complaint that I've received. Can you please tell me your side of the story? And the response is, the contract that I gave them said, I'm here to do blower door testing and total duct leakage testing, and that's it. I ask for a copy of the countersigned contract. I see it. And, I'm not a lawyer, but it's really clearly laid out who is responsible for what in this situation. And in this case, the rater's responsibility was strictly blower door testing, duct leakage testing. They weren't there for energy code compliance. And, you know, I go back to the builder and I say, hey, look, I've seen the contract. This is what it says. This is actually outside of our scope of quality management oversight. But, you know, I can't do anything in this case because that's what the contract said. You didn't have it in the scope of work. So, if you guys have documents that you request, go ahead and include that third-party energy verifier scope of work document, because what you really want to do is make sure to avoid situations like that. It's super stressful and it causes lots of headaches. And at the end of the day, you might have a homeowner who's wondering why they can't move into their house for Thanksgiving dinner, and it's all because there is a miscommunication on whose responsibilities are what. So let's try and avoid things like that. So moving on to the next one, and this is also another really, really big issue here. The third-party verifier working on the project, they may not actually be certified by an HCO or other approved entity. This has come up in some conversations I've had with people. Don't just assume that because they have that residential energy inspector plans examiner certification from the ICC that they're actually qualified to do the field work, right? You need to make sure that they're actually certified by an approved or recognized entity. So BSI, we have a public facing registry on our website. You can go there and look at all the verifiers. But I also recommend that you accept BPI certifications. They are completely unaffiliated with us. I make no money from anything from them. And they've been around a lot longer than we have. But generally, just make sure whoever is there, if they have an IECC certification, that they also have a BPI, a BSI certification, or something like that. All right, next up. So another one that has popped up, unfortunately, is where HVAC contractors install a different system than what's in the design package from the manual JS&D. So if the verifier is doing their job right, they note that system change out, then they require the HVAC contractor to provide updated design documents so they can verify the house still complies with the energy code or above code programs, right? Unfortunately, what usually happens is what I'm about to tell you. I've personally been on site when an HVAC contractor got called out respectfully for installing an AC with electric resistance furnace. And that project actually had a heat pump specified on the house. Well, we called the builder, and the builder wound up siding with the HVAC contractor, and that was due to their long-term relationship. And they fired the verifier in front of me. Then 6 months after the home buyer moved in, the winter hit and the system couldn't actually heat the house. So as soon as it warmed up, the builder went back to the HVAC contractor, got the truth that yeah, I did switch out an AC with a heat strip, and then made the contractor install the system that was actually specified. However, they then turned around and told the home buyer it was the verifier's fault for not telling them. So that's a really important thing. I've seen this a lot when there are, and we've seen this over the past 4 years, right, where you have shortages in equipment and things like that. And HVAC contractors, plumbers, they try and install an equivalent system of some sort. And so in Texas, we're a cooling dominated climate, right? Everyone likes to be nice and chill during the summer, which lasts 9 months out of the year, right? And so they might have a shortage for something that they designed and specified for that house at the time that house is under construction. So they say, hey, we've got this other system, same size, same efficiency, and we'll just swap it out. But then there are different elements about that system that may not actually allow it to comply, right? There's things like latent load and whatnot that it may not meet, and then you wind up with comfort complaints and things like that. So really, really, really important to keep that in mind. And then sadly, I'm gonna tell you that probably the biggest challenge right now is what we call the drive-by rating, right? This is simply when a verifier shows up on site, if you're lucky, and then they don't do an inspection, right? So if your code department is only taking a piece of paper with the test results written down, or maybe even just a piece of paper generated by a software tool, you can't guarantee the inspections actually took place. You should require photos in the report of the test results and installation inspections at a minimum. And I'll talk a little bit more about this later. That said, at the end of the day, barring any of the challenges I mentioned, once all the tests and inspections are done, the verifier will either generate the code reports in an approved software tool like HouseRater, or register the project with their oversight entity like BSI. If it's the latter, it will be reviewed by our quality management team, and then it will be registered with our registry. Then the documents can be generated and sent to the appropriate authorities, the builder, the HJ, etc. So let's go ahead and actually talk a little bit more about HouseRater. It's a BSI approved integrated software tool. It not only serves as an energy modeling tool like ResCheck, IC3, etc., rim rate, rim design, but it's also capable of generating the code compliance and energy rating reports, and it works as an inspection tool, right? And so there is a general workflow that I want to lay out for people here. So the workflow in HouseRater tracks with that four-step home energy rating process. So verifiers will create an energy model that'll either be from a template or from scratch. Then they enroll it in appropriate programs. So if the project is only pursuing the energy code, let's say the 2021 IECC, then it'll have that single 2021 IECC program attached. If it has more that it's going for, like a certified ERI with BSI, you could see more programs attached. And then all of their overlapping requirements are layered on. This is to make sure that the verifier in charge of the program, in charge of the project, is meeting all the requirements necessary to complete that program, right? So next, they're going to schedule the inspections and communicate to the builder exactly what their scope is. Then they'll do the inspections, comparing what's in the field with what's in the energy model and make changes as needed. If corrections by a contractor need to be made, a great example always is if someone does a really bad installation install job, it will be noted and reported that a follow-up inspection to verify corrections happened will be done. We don't want to have people do what's called a correct and proceed. We want people to actually verify that the problem got fixed, right? Once all the inspections are done and they're synced, the responsible verifier is going to verify that the as-built model reflects what was actually inspected, right? Next step, once all the documents are uploaded and the model is ready, it's going to be sent to BSI. Our quality management team will review the projects on a 95% confidence interval, and should they meet the requirements, it will be registered. Upon registration, the confirmed reports can be generated, sent to the builder, code department, and others, right? All right, so you guys may, if you're a nerd, which I will raise my hand and you can't see me, but I'm raising my hand, including myself in that, you care a little bit about how things are actually calculated, right? So unfortunately, most software tools that are out there used by raters and verifiers use some kind of proprietary black box. And honestly, it doesn't make a lick of sense, okay? However, HouseRater is connected via an API to a Department of Energy supported engine, and it's maintained by the National Renewable Energy Lab. That's NREL. This engine is called EnergyPlus OS-ERI. So what happens is this engine is actually the thing that generates the ERI, R406, and above code program results. And then for the prescriptive or total UA or total building performance paths, HouseRater actually sends it straight to EnergyPlus to get the results. Unlike other software tools, which unfortunately may charge extra to generate reference homes that have been modified by region. So North Texas, I'm sure you guys know what I'm talking about. HouseRater and BSI produce and maintain reference homes that can be used by rating companies. No rating company can create or modify reference home. Everything is strictly locked in by BSI and or HouseRater, depending on the complexity of the reference home. And then I'm finally going to go ahead and get to what it is the whole presentation was supposed to be about, talking about the reports. And so HouseRater can generate the reports for each compliance path with the mandatory requirements baked in, right? So I did a mock-up of a project in Frisco, Texas that was, quote, pursuing the 2021 IECC compliance, and then I generated these projected reports. So in this example, I added the 2021 IECC program in HouseRater, but I didn't mark it as complete. So you can see there's a large red projected across the entire report, right? So you should only see this on projects which have not been completed. Further, to actually generate the code compliance reports, the mandatory requirements checklist must be filled out in HouseRater. It is not a checkbox that the verifier just clicks to say, yeah, we did it, right? The verifier has to go through each code checklist item and mark it as pass, fail, or NA. This is another challenge. A lot of other software tools don't have this baked in. You might be able to generate the checklist, but it's something that the verifier does outside of the software tool. You can't get a confirmed completed code report from HouseRater unless you do the checklist in HouseRater. That way, we know they actually did it and they're not just saying they did it. So I'm going to start with the prescriptive report and then go through the different kind of structure of it. So in each report, you can tell which compliance path the project is going for if you look at the top left. So I've got that red arrow right there. And then here you can see it clearly states prescriptive compliance under the IECC completion certificate. Then on the right, you can see the address, the builder permit date, and the builder's license number under that. In this case, I was using a dummy address and a dummy builder. So obviously there's some stuff that's not filled out right. Underneath that box, you'll see the results, and it'll tell you very clearly whether a home passes or fails. You'll also be able to see underneath that what reference home was used. So where it says IECC 2021, it may say HB 3215, NCT COG, or some other modified regional code variant. Just depends, but it tells you exactly what the reference home that was used, right? Underneath that, you'll see a breakdown of the different elements which have to be complied with for the prescriptive path. So the left side under IECC is the reference home characteristics. The right side under as designed is the energy model. Then on the far right side, you'll see a color-coded checklist with X's and check marks for pass fail designations. Then to the bottom left under that table, you'll see a summary of the home's minimum rated features. This is where you can see the home type, model, condition to floor area, number of bedrooms, mechanical system information, performance data, and insulation values. And obviously I was using a bunch of generic stuff, so don't hold it against me. To the right of that box, you'll actually see the mandatory requirements checklist. So if this checklist was not completed in HouseRater, all you'll see are red X's like you see right here, okay? Then underneath that mandatory checklist section, you'll see a signature name, the data generation, and then information for the rating company. And that's the prescriptive report. All the reports generally follow that same structure, right? But I'm going to go ahead and highlight a couple of the other differences in the other compliance paths. So with the UA compliance, you'll
Connor,
see, yeah.
sorry, can you back up just one slide?
Yeah.
So just to reiterate, so what you had just said, because I think it's very important, is the box on the lower right-hand corner with all the red X's. Your software, once the inspector in the field goes through all those inspections, this is different than what a res checklist looks like, because that's not something that has feedback. Your software that you're working with has the feedback and capabilities to uncheck those, put green check marks that this was actually verified in the field, correct?
Yeah, so the verifier has to fill out the entire checklist and specifically answer pass, fail, or NA, depending on the quality or depending on what it is, right? So for a single family house, we would assume that the systems serving multiple units would be marked as NA, right? Because a single family dwelling unit's not going to have shared systems unless they're doing those weird geothermal things. But yeah, the verifier has to fill it out completely and mark it as complete. And I'll get to a report in a little bit that you guys should be requesting. So yeah, it's baked into the system. You can't actually get a confirmed report unless you completely fill out the checklist. It's not just a box that you check and you say, yeah, I did it. You actually have to proactively say, yes, I did it. These things were met, right?
Got it.
So it's a
Okay,
lot
thank you.
different than the other software tools out there. So on the UA side, you'll see very clearly it says UA compliance. Then you'll see the area weighted U factors table. It is more compressed down from what you saw in the prescriptive report. Then for the total building performance report or the performance path, you'll see once again the report clearly says what path it is in the top left. And then you have the annual energy estimated cost there. And then we've got the R406 report. So this is the one report that is different than the other code reports. And it's because the R406 ERI path requires registration and review by an oversight organization. So it actually uses our standard ERI certificate template. There is some overlap that I'll talk about here in a sec. So much like the other reports, you'll see in the top left, it says what it is. In this case, it's the ERI. Underneath that, you'll see the ERI speedometer. You'll see the registry and project ID, as well as the final inspection date. So in this case, because I was doing a projected report, that final inspection date is marked as NA. So once someone has done that inspection in the field, it'll actually have a date there. And then to the right side of that, you'll see the target ERI, and then the ERI without solar, and then the version of the engine that's used to generate the results. And then like the other paths, you'll see a box that tells you the compliance status, pass or fail. And then underneath that, you'll see the reference home. So again, I was using the 2021 IECC reference home. Then the minimum rated features section contains the same information as the other reports, but it is formatted differently because ANSI 301 has specific requirements of how things get presented. And then to the right of that, you'll see the estimated MBTUs per year. Then at the very bottom right, just like with the other software tools or other software reports, you'll see information about the rating company. You'll see the responsible individual and then the home certification organization. When it's from one of our clients, it'll say Building Science Institute, limited company, our address, and contact information. And then underneath the verification organization, you'll see the rating company's contact information. So, don't get confused just because it's blank right there. It's because I was using my BSI account to do this. So yeah, there is one more report, and if you haven't picked up on this yet, I'm really keen on this one that I'm about to talk about because I don't want to BS anyone. There are a lot of challenges with energy code compliance. So code departments, y'all are stretched thin, right? You guys have these generalists on staff that their priority and their focus is on the health and safety codes because we don't want people to die, right? That's just the reality. So the energy code gets put on third parties a lot for compliance and conformance sake. But the code departments, you guys, you can't just accept a written piece of paper anymore for energy code, right? So that's why I recommend, as part of the certificate of occupancy package, requiring photos from the on-site inspections. So I've talked about this a lot. Due to HouseRater's integrated nature, where you have field data that can be collected in energy model verification in the field, when all the inspection data is synced in the system, our clients can generate a report literally with the click of a button that lists off all the photos that they've taken in that inspection. So I recommend requesting the inspection overview report or equivalent information from the rating company or the third-party verifier. Some examples of that, I really recommend that you get pictures of the HVAC system. Okay, this is a minimum rated feature that when someone does a home energy rating, they're required to document this. And I can't think of a slower process than handwriting it down when you can just take a picture of it. And then the other thing, and this is super important for y'all, you need to make sure you actually get the test results from the third-party verifier and have it in picture format. I have unfortunately been I've talked to some people who allege some very interesting things, from the drive-by ratings to literally calling me and giving me a play-by-play action of someone sitting in their truck for 15 minutes and then driving off and then having the drywallers drywall the house without that person ever getting out of their truck. So if there aren't pictures, at this point, I don't actually trust that those things were done, right? So if you do this, right, if you require the photos, expect pushback. A lot of rating companies, they operate like little kingdoms, right? And they don't actually care to have actual oversight. That's because most of them are also doing their own QA, right? And then when you look at the percentage of required confirmed ratings to get reviewed, it's only 10%, right? At a minimum, it's 10%. And then of those, a vast majority that get reviewed, it's anywhere from 3 to 6 months after the project has been certified. And so, it's the right thing to do to request photos, right? And I hear a lot. About companies that use uncertified or unqualified inspectors that are just sitting in their trucks, pencil whipping reports. And I don't want that, right? I do recommend another report, and it's what we call a house summary report. And so what this is it's basically a report that lists off all the R values and U factors and inner test data for the energy model. And so that'll give you a detailed understanding of what was used in the model. And this could help you find out if a verifier is fudging numbers to pass. So, sometimes I get called in as a third-party QA guy to review other companies' work. And I've asked for this report and asked for the field data collection. And then I see that the person in the office put in a different test number than what the guy in the field got. And the guy in the field got, it was a failing number, and his field report said, hey, I have to retest this. You need to fix some stuff. But for whatever reason, that person in the office left in 3 ACH, right? Um, so, there are some things like that you guys have to be aware of. And then another report that you could request is the reference home house summary report. And so this is actually more about making sure the software tool is doing their job right. And that's kind of one of those things where you really want to make sure the software tools aren't fiddling with things they shouldn't be fiddled with. Neither here nor there. I do want to have this slide up for some resources. And again, you can see here, I've got some stuff to verify companies that work with who, whether or not someone has certifications. That's the Rater certification check, the Verifier registry. You can also see ResNet registry and BSI registry search. So if someone has registered a home with our registries, you can type in the address and find it. And I have a couple of links for ethics and complaint forms. And then there's an example of issues with QA providers, right? So I'll leave it up here for a second. I know that this is being recorded and posted on YouTube, so I'm sure Randy can also share a copy of my presentation. But that's my contact information right there. So feel free to harass me or gently harass me. And yeah, Randy, that is my presentation. I would like to, I did see in the chat some conversations about, let's see here, and what there is to say about inverter and variable speed equipment, if any. I don't know if Sally is still in the chat or not. Let me see. Sally, are you?
I think she's still here.
Yeah, I think, yeah, I see her.
Yeah, she's here.
Okay, perfect. So, what exactly are you curious about related to the inverter variable speed equipment?
I think some of it, she'll type in a response, but I think some of it
Mhm.
is, it is new technology. It's advanced
Mhm.
technology. Someone's got to verify it's been installed properly, which is already the case anyways. They've got to
Mhm.
make sure that it's commissioned properly and actually operate as designed.
Mhm.
But being that it's that new, a lot of people just look at it, they collect the model number for the condenser and for the air handler and for the coil
Mhm.
and move past it, but they don't truly verify that this new technology is set up properly. That's going to be a challenge in the future for third parties when that new technology hits the ground and is installed, to not just gloss over what's there, is to actually
Mhm.
verify that it actually operates properly. And of course, that the model is credited for. And I'm not sure, you could probably speak to this more than I can. The libraries in the softwares, I know they collect data from manufacturers. I don't know that inverter technology is in those libraries yet, so that it could take credit for the efficiencies that it can produce. Do you know?
That is a good question. So I'm gonna pop open the OS-ERI engine stuff and look really quick
Okay.
about inverters. Let's see here, inverter. Yeah. So yeah, it basically looks like um if there's a okay, so when it comes to HVAC equipment, it's assumed if you select the engine says is assumed uh I'll answer that question in a second, Steve. It's assumed to be, if you select variable speed, it's assumed to have and it's assumed to be an inverter engine, inverter driven. and that's applicable to uh, the heat pumps and such. So that's what I got for that. When it comes to efficiency at part loads, it's gonna depend, right? Because I don't want to say, you know, there's a point at which you can slice bologna really thinly, and then it doesn't actually matter. Not to sound negative about anything, right? I really like variable speed equipment. I wish that's what I had in my house. Uh, um, but you get some amount of efficiency for it being listed as a variable speed and whatnot, uh, provided we have the documentation to prove that what's installed is actually variable speed and has an inverter driven technology there. Um, like you said, Randy, it's not been something that's super adopted in across the board. So there's some things, yeah, so there are some things that don't really translate well right now.
Right.
But I know that NREL is working on this kind of stuff, right?
Yep.
And so, yeah, Sally, it'll only say SEER on the report, but on the back end, it is something that can be specified and designated. And then on our QA side, QM side, we can verify that someone has, they have this make and model that's listed there. Does the picture line up? We can verify that data with the manufacturer and say, yeah, this system is indeed a variable speed system and with these efficiencies and things like that. And a quick shout out to code officials. I really, really, really recommend you get your HVAC contractors to tag into a software called MeasureQuick. MeasureQuick is a commissioning software that works with uh, different tools, a lot of different tools that are out there. And it can actually verify that a system installed is working at a certain efficiency with certain capacities and everything. Super awesome. It has a baked in workflow like HouseRater does that allows people to prove uh, that what they installed, they've commissioned it and it actually works the way that it's designed. So it's super, super awesome. I really, really recommend that.
Forget, Connor,
Now,
that's not spelled Quick again, right? What was it again?
yeah,
Measure,
it is spelled
is it?
measure.
Okay.
It's measure quick. Literally one word, MEASUREQUICK. The
Got
Q
it.
is capitalized. It's super awesome tool. ACCA is working with them, and you can actually get essentially a certification on the HVAC commissioning, which again, we really care about making sure that homes are built per the specs, that it's people aren't doing switch outs and things like that out of the blue, shortchanging the home buyer. And that MeasureQuick software with the tools that will do the commissioning really, really opens up the world to make sure that people are doing their jobs right. So I really recommend sharing this with your HVAC contractors. You can even request that they provide like the MeasureQuick certificate or something like that. I am aware that different manufacturers have kind of manufacturer specific systems similar. I think, Sally, correct me if I'm wrong if you're still on. I think Daikin has a software that they just released or just announced that's similar in nature to help verify commissioning. Um, so yeah, it's pretty cool. I really, really like it. I do see another question in the QA from Steve. Yes, HouseRater supports 310. It's supported it since like a year and a half ago, I think. So it supports 310 and HVAC grading. So that MeasureQuick system, it's more expansive than the ANSI 310 HVAC grading system, but it has a lot of overlap with it. And so that's when I talk about commissioning the system, that's what ANSI 310 refers to. It's just the ANSI 310 is more oriented for raters and verifiers in the field. But yes, HouseRater supports ANSI 310. They have fields specifically for it, and and it requires the field verification in order to make the claim something is grade one. I know other software tools literally just have boxes that you can type in, and you can type in a number until it says grade one and then call it a day. We don't allow that to happen in our system. Um, so yeah.
Yeah, and I'll just really quickly, I know we've talked about a little bit on that, but ANSI 310, I hope eventually will be standard for most construction. It's basically grading the installation of the HVAC system like you grade insulation and how well it's installed.
Mhm.
You're actually grading how well the installation of the equipment's been installed. It's kind of like a commissioning on a residential
Mhm.
scale where you actually verify airflow, you verify watt draw, you
Mhm.
verify other items of that system. It's an option out there now. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think Energy Star 3.2, it will be part of Energy Star certified homes, or is it still an option?
So it's still an option. It's not a mandatory
Okay.
feature. I can tell you that for version 3.2 compliance, I unless you're doing super high efficient equipment and things like that, super high R values in the envelope, it's really hard to hit version 3.2 requirements um, without doing that ANSI 310 grading. So it looks like I don't want to say there's going to be forced pickup for ANSI 310, but it definitely looks like if you're going to try and comply with that program version for whatever purpose, like federal tax credits next year, you're going to have to do 310 grading. Yeah.
So that 3.2 drops on January 1st of 2025.
Yeah, so the way that Energy Star certification program works is for the federal tax credit, the 45L tax credit, projects, homes, dwelling units sold on or after January 1 of 2025 that are single family, they're required to be certified under version 3.2. Basically, what that means for a lot of builders out there is whatever they're breaking ground on, uh, but I would say honestly in like June, right? So we're like a month and a half away from that, or like just over a month away. Whatever they're breaking ground in June, they need to be shooting for version 3.2 compliance, because they don't want to, if they want that tax credit, if they sell that house on January 1, but they don't comply with version 3.2, they don't get the tax credit. Confusingly, in Texas and Oklahoma, there is a calendar adoption for version 3.2, which is different from the 45L compliance. So you may still get people certifying homes under version 3.1, which is the current active version for both Texas, Oklahoma, and the 45L. But January 1, 2025 rolls around. We're going to see some people that opt to continue getting Energy Star certified under version 3.1 until it becomes mandatory in the state, which I think is going to be in like 2 or 3 years. Oh, that's a great question. So, does version 3.2 not allow sampling? So, sampling for single family is being sunset by the Energy Star New Homes program. I'm not going to talk about multifamily. So, strictly for the single family side, sampling is going to be dropped. That is going to kind of be specific on the HCO. I can tell you, since our existence, due to the many issues with sampling on single family homes, BSI has not allowed sampling for single family since we started. I've just seen too many horror stories. I've literally had conversations with homeowners who call and complain to me about things that they run into at their homes. And I really feel for them, because there's one woman who called and talked to me, and they moved into a house. It was Energy Star certified and everything. And for about a year, their child who had asthma kept having severe allergic reactions. They had to go to the hospital several times. And then ultimately, what they found out when someone went up in the attic is the supply duct to their kid's room was disconnected. And they said, how could this happen on Energy Star? Then comes to find out the verifier who certified the home, or a verifier from the company that certified the home, came out, looked, and literally told the home buyer, oh yeah, this was one of the homes that got sampled. Right. So yeah, sampling for single family is stupid and should not be allowed at all.
And
and I
that's
will
a
die
great
on that.
point. It's a great point back to your first point of scope of work. So you may be in a city that the city inspectors do the energy inspections, but the third parties are there to verify Energy Star compliance only, and they're
Mhm.
allowing sampling, which means not every house is getting verified with code compliance because the city may be thinking, well, I know I'm supposed to do that. I'll make sure it's insulated, but I'm not going to worry about the rest of the stuff because there's a third party presence here. That doesn't mean they're inspecting every single home yet.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And yes, single family does apply to a single family attached projects like duplexes and townhomes. Sampling is still allowed for stacked multifamily. So low rise multifamily, mid, high rise would be allowed to be sampled. Um, but yeah, for single family, detached homes, attached duplex, quadplex, and townhomes, uh, that's getting sunset. You wouldn't be able to sample on that. And BSI is not allowed sampling on single family dwelling units like that at all. So yeah, we want to make sure that what's in the house is on the label and what's on the label is actually in the house. In fact, I had a rater just last week, and Randy knows what I'm talking about, who his sister asked him to go out to a house, and he goes out to the house and he does his inspection and stuff, and the builder sent him the certificate for it, and the certificate listed R3 continuous on the house. And he's looking at his pictures from the inspection, and there's no continuous insulation on this house at all. And he goes, well,
Mm.
what's the deal with this? So again, we want to avoid situations like that. We don't want the home buyers who are, I mean, goodness sakes, right? The real estate industry right now is crazy. We don't want people who are potentially spending their life savings to get a product that was not built to the specifications the builder promised to build to. We want to avoid that. And yeah, I will go down a rabbit hole if I keep talking about that. So, yeah,
We,
are there
we
any
all we
other,
all
yeah,
can.
yeah, yeah. Ain't that the
Well, and
truth?
Sally brought up a good point at the very end there too. She basically said AHRI certificate being collected at the city as well to verify the correct equipment's been installed. I mean, that goes every time I do training in cities, it's do you collect manual J and S? And a lot of them, it surprises me, a lot of them would say they collect the J, but not the S. And that's half of the equation. You verified that load calculations were theoretically done, but you're not verifying that the equipment matches the load. So it's again, you go back to when we had product shortages throughout COVID, that was an issue. We understood that there was supply houses that were short. AHRIs trying to be verified for even code or Energy Star was a mess because there was no telling what was going to be installed. And some of it was wildly different and changes the outcome of the model of the house. I mean, I don't know if you saw that, but we definitely saw it.
Yeah, we actually had a horrible, horrible situation where a HVAC contractor wasn't paying attention to what his supplier gave him. It was the same size equipment, same make, but the model number was different. And uh, they had installed the inside units already, but then I mean everyone knows that sometimes things grow legs and walk away. So they didn't install the outside unit until it was almost time for closing. And they installed this outside system that was not matched for that inside system. Same size, same manufacturer and everything. And it was basically they had done between the 6 months between they installed that inside unit and they installed that outside unit, there is a revamp from that manufacturer on that specific line. And so that inside and outside unit were mismatched. And we had to sit there and wait for an extra 6 months just to get a letter from the manufacturer stating, yes, these systems do actually work together, because that's super important, right? You may have mismatched systems that work together because they're the same manufacturer, but that's not always the case. And so we had to get some kind of verification, some kind of proof that yes, this does work. And then these were the tested efficiencies for it. So there were things like that happened, and it was a pain in the neck. So yeah, having an HRI certificate super useful. And I do want to point out that the IMC and the IRC both specifically talk about the manual J. And so, you guys, the cities that are not collecting the manual J and manual S, and are just relying on third-party verifiers to do that, again, that may not be in their scope of work, right? So I can't say this enough. If you don't have that scope of work question answered, you may unfortunately be allowing things to slide through that otherwise shouldn't be there. So get a manual J and S from the HVAC contractor for each project. If there's, let's see here, how do I say this? No HVAC contractor's response should be the manual J is proprietary information. I can literally go on a website right now and buy a book that tells me the math to do the manual J because it's a public ANSI accredited standard, right? You can also go and buy licenses to manual J software tools yourselves. I don't recommend doing that unless you get training, but you can do that. So it is not a proprietary thing at all, right? Don't just take that on its face. Okay. That's probably the most annoying thing to me that I have conversations with people about is, well, this HVAC contractor told me it was proprietary and he couldn't share this information with me. BS. And I
Mhm.
don't mean the building science kind of BS, right?
Yeah, we've heard that before. I mean, it just surprises me what can be done. We've seen heat pump condensers installed with gas furnaces because someone just didn't look when they were installing it, and
Hmm.
it just makes no sense. And it's the worst thing for a homeowner because it's not going to function properly.
Yeah. Yeah. And at the end of the day, that's what we should care about. Health and safety of the occupants. And are they comfortable,
Yep,
right? And I hate to say it, but energy efficiency and things like that, that is all connected to comfort. And so if that person is comfortable in their home, they probably have an energy efficient house. And that's the reality. So as long as we can make sure they're not going to die. I've been in homes that had gas leaks, new construction homes that had gas leaks, right? And we want to avoid that. Health and safety is paramount. There's nothing else that really meets that. And then are the people moving into that dwelling unit, are they going to be comfortable? And that energy efficiency and things like that is related to that. It really is.
absolutely. Well, I can't thank you enough, Connor, for doing this. I know some of this to a lot of people was probably very high level, some technical stuff, but this is kind of what third parties go through. This is what they're there for. They're the experts in the field. Connor and his team are there to help them as well. They were making innovative strides to just be able to allow even cities to have. And did you talk about that, about cities having access to the data to be able to see the
Right.
inspection data?
Yeah, so something else that is really unique about BSI. So, uh, ResNet has 100 different QA providers, and each QA provider has their own system for tracking inspections and things like that. There are some that all they do is they take pictures with their phone, they text it to the office or email it to the office, and they call it a day. There are others that have their own built-up tool and things like that, but there's no centralized repository where QA providers are required to put all of their data. BSI has that. So HouseRater is that platform. I can go in right now and I can look at any inspection that's being done in HouseRater today, right? Or yesterday, day before, so on and so forth. We do have the standing offer for HJs, program managers, and the like. If you guys want access to the inspections, to see read only, to see the inspections that have been done and synced in the system, just reach out and let me know. That's a huge thing that, to be frank, you literally cannot get with any other organization out there. But we're willing to work with you guys to get access. Of course, I'm not just going to give it to some random voice over the internet. So I'll have to make sure you are who you say you are and such. But yeah, AHJs can get access, read-only access to the inspection data in our system.
Very good. Well, again, I thank you, Connor, for that. And so with that, we'll wrap this up. But just join us on our next webinars. We've got one on April 30th at 10:30. It's the benefit for demand controlled recirculating systems. It's by Gabe, which is with the Innovative Group and Auto Hot. So they're helping to basically improve water and energy performance in buildings through generational recirculation demand controls. That's part of code right now for residential and commercial. And also on May 14th, we have Building a Sustainable Future. This is something that's going to be interesting to a lot of people that looks at innovative materials and innovative things for homes. So it's Sean and Vanessa with Levin Electronics. So they're trying to help make homes more affordable to build, purchase, and operate. There's a lot of electronic and switches and things that go with that. They'll talk more in depth about what they can offer. And Karen does have a question on here. Well, yes, we will be sharing the slides. Connor, if you could send that to me in a PDF version, and I'll push it out with the survey email.
Yeah, sure thing.
Okay. Well, guys, I appreciate it very much. Thanks for your time, and we look forward to seeing you guys on the next webinar. Thanks again.